All right, good evening. If anyone has a cell phone, please silence them. The meeting before the Sawyer County Board of Appeals is hereby called to order at 6 p.m. at Sawyer County Courthouse, Hayward, Wisconsin, October 18th, 2022. Public hearing before the Sawyer County Board is hereby called into order. I did that. Roll call: Al Gerber, Laura Rusk, Gordy Christians, Dee Doblis, and Joe Barron. On behalf of the Board of Appeals from the zoning office, Jay Kozlowski and Michelle Harris. Those persons desiring to give pertinent testimony will be afforded to the opportunity to do so. As recognized by the chairman, that person will clearly state their full name before giving testimony. Each hearing will follow this order: reading of the application, submission of the file to the board, applicant's statements and presentation of evidence, testimony of those in support of the application, statements from persons in objection to the application, rebuttal as permitted by the board, and decision by the board. Orderly procedure requires that each side shall proceed without interruption by the other. All testimony will be addressed to the board, and there will be no questions or arguments between individuals. Any persons aggrieved by a decision of the board may appeal the decision to the circuit court within 30 days of the date following the board's decision letter. The day following the signing of the board's decision letter is the first day of the 30-day appeal filing period. This public hearing was published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 in Wisconsin statutes, in the Sawyer County Record and Sawyer County Gazette. Public hearing will follow this order: variance applications, new business, and adjournment. First item on the agenda: has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes of our previous meeting? I believe so. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Motion been made to approve the minutes as presented without any additions, corrections, or alterations. That second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion been made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have three variance applications this evening. The first is the public hearing, the town of Ojibwa, variance number 22-005. Owner Joe Salter and James Schleffler, part of the southwest one half of the northwest one quarter of Outlot 4 of CSM number 4146, parcel number 020-639-062309. It's 0.34 total acres zoned residential recreational 2. Application is for the construction of a 2-story 20 by 20 primary dwelling, 22 by 22 with eaves. This structure is proposed to have a 55-foot setback at the closest point to the center line of Chippewa Flowage Road, which is a town road. Also, this proposed primary dwelling is to be located on an outlot of certified survey map number 4146, with no additional language indicating on the survey map for the intent of the outlot. Variance is requested of section 4.21 parent 3 of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance. Setbacks for requirements on highways and roads would require the prior granting of a variance for any structure less than 63 feet to the center line of the road. The proposed request is for 55 feet. Also, per the Sawyer County subdivision control condominium ordinance, section 2.0 parent U, for definitions of an outlot, may not be used as a building site unless it is in compliance with the restrictions within the ordinance. Also, section 3.10 of the same subdivision ordinance states that outlots created on a CSM shall be accompanied with a statement of the proposed or use of the outlot. There is no language specified on the survey map that states the intent of the outlot, and the owners were under the impression that they could build on the lot. Prior granting of a variance for section 2.0 parent U of the subdivision ordinance is also being requested to build on an outlot, even though the intent of the outlot was never disclosed within the initial survey map recorded in 1995. As part of my staff report, again, the project history and on-site notes. An on-site inspection was conducted on June 1st, 2022 by myself. At that time of the on-site, we did lay out a 20 by 20 building, 22 by 22 with eaves. This would be for a 2-story primary dwelling, which is the minimum size that a primary dwelling would be allowed for in that zone district. The building was set in a location that it would meet the minimum setback requirements to the Chippewa Flowage, which is 75 feet, and the minimum side lot line setbacks, which would be 10 feet. After the proposed building site was laid on site, the proposed setback distance of 55 feet to the center line of Chippewa Flowage Road is where the first variance request comes from. This is for an 8-foot reduction in that required setback distance. Again, the second aspect of this variance request is the nature of the outlot. Generally, outlots are created as remnant pieces of land splits. These outlots are generally deemed non-buildable and are created as such because they cannot meet the required lot configurations. That being said, though, the survey map is also to indicate or have annotation as to why the outlot is being created. From the survey map that was recorded in 1995, no additional language was shown on that map. The current applicant purchased the property in 2017 and was unaware that the lot was not to be available for a building site as per the outlot definition. This variance request would also include the ability to build on an outlot while keeping in mind that no additional language was included on the CSM to state the intent of the outlot. Certified survey maps or CSMs today would include language that was specified that it would be not to be for a building site or that the outlot would be combined with another lot. As per action of the town board, so this is a little interesting because they didn't check mark the actual box. I would assume it was approved because Granica would have told me if they would have denied it. Maybe the applicants can speak to that, but it was signed Dan Granica, chairman, Robert Granica, supervisor, Randy Niederkorn, supervisor, but they had not indicated whether it was approved, denied, or tabled. It was then forwarded to us by Jill Pettit, town clerk. I do believe the applicants are here. They can maybe speak more on that. I'm sure they were at that board meeting. I was not. There were 8 opinion letters sent out. 2 were returned with objections. These were sent to the Board of Appeals members. These are pretty short, so I will just read those into record. This is for variance. This is the Lacouture Tribal Governing Board. Does not have objections to the proposed variance application. And the lot in question was deemed non-buildable, meaning no neighbor. If this variance is granted, it opens the door for more variances in this area. We sincerely object. Signed, John Mellenmass. That is all.
You said 2 were returned with objections?
So, and I'll have to double check with Kathy, but yes, she did indicate on the cover sheet, 8 opinion letters were sent out, 2 were returned. I have the 2 returns.
That's LCO and this last guy?
But LCO does not have objections. So there should have been really 1 objection, 1 non-objection. And I'll confirm that with Kathy tomorrow because it looks like she may have marked the wrong box there too.
All right. Okay, are the applicants here or someone to speak on their behalf?
My name is Joe Salter, owner of the property. Really, to go back to the town of Ojibwa, they did approve it. Their very words were, "Who are we to decide? You guys are going to have the final say anyways." So that's kind of what they said.
All right.
How are we just? He just basically said, "We're not going to be the ones to stop the process. If somebody wants to stop it, it'll be at this level." So they did approve it. They had some questions about what that looks like being closer to the road, and we answered some of those questions accordingly. There was some concern if there was going to be a buffer of trees between the road and the building other than the driveway, and that buffer will remain there. There's 6-7 feet of buffer there that the trees will remain. That was really their only objections to it, or concerns that they had. For us, it's a matter of wanting to spend more time up here in Hayward. I told my wife if I was asked why, it's because I don't want to tow my camper up here anymore. Really what it boils down to. And we like having friends up here. And when you put 2 campers on the lot, that's probably where all the neighbors didn't like, because then we're parked in the ditch or parked 3 cars in the driveway, and it was kind of cluttered, where putting up a cabin for us and our family would be more beneficial and allow us for more room on that particular lot without having 2 campers, 2 vehicles, a boat, and all that kind of stuff. So it does bring some challenges as well. The frontage is not great. There's a few pockets in there as indicated on those maps that were provided that bring up some challenges, which is why it's not buildable. There's one indentation into the property that ultimately takes away all of your frontage from the flowage side. If we had that, it would be buildable to some extent, but it indents into that property kind of uniquely, and it takes away basically all the buildable area, allowing us to then have to have 8 feet. We are also only asking for a 20 by 20. That's the bare minimum. We're going to build a fairly modern cabin. If we do get approved, it will be very nice. It will raise the value of that property and every property next to it. So that's our intention. That's it.
Hold on a second, we may have some questions. Before we ask you any, Jay, could you define a little better this outlot designation? I think I get it, but I'd like to have it on the record.
Yeah, so it is classified as an outlot. It is outlot for the survey map that was recorded in 1995, and I actually have a copy of that survey map. Now, ultimately, I don't think there was too many county employees that were still here in 1995 as to, the rhyme or reason as to why this outlot was created. But as the current Sawyer County zoning condominium and subdivision ordinance would read, is that outlots are deemed as unbuildable lots. They're generally as
Okay, stop right there.
Yep.
Are deemed as unbuildable by who?
By ordinance definition.
Okay.
Now, that being said, it's also to be accompanied with annotation or a statement as to why the outlot is being created, and or annotation on the survey map that in fact the outlot is deemed unbuildable.
But that
So,
never happened in this.
That
case.
never happened in 1995, correct. So moving forward today, if I saw a survey map like this come through, I would object it or reject it and state that they either need to have annotation that this outlot is to be combined back together with some other remnant, like the lot to the north of lot 3 or lot 2 or lot 1, or have annotation that this lot is deemed unbuildable of outlot 4. And again, those annotations do not exist on this survey map from 1995. This is the first time I've kind of seen something like this. I mean, there's lots of outlots out there, but they have annotation as they are remnants and they're combined back together with another lot, or they straight say on the survey map that they are unbuildable. And if we had that circumstance, I think we'd have a little bit different case before us tonight. This one's a little bit of a puzzle piece where that language was never included on the 1995 survey, and the applicants had stated in their testimony that they were unaware that it was unbuildable as well.
There's no backlot restriction or lot line restriction? Distance from the back lot line, 10 feet?
It would be a side lot line for that, and that would be the minimum requirement.
Okay. Okay.
So we squared it up and fit it in there. That, I mean, we're tight on all sides, and that's what we're left with the road setback to request for the variance.
Square building, how do you decide which is front and back? Left side.
So ultimately,
Front faces the water, right?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions of the applicant? Yeah, hearing none. Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak on behalf of the application? Is there anyone to speak in opposition of the application? Hearing none, we'll proceed with discussion by the board.
Excuse me?
Yep.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm on
Can hear you,
video
I
on
can't see
Zoom.
you.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Yes.
perfect. I'm not gonna put the video on, but so I'm representing Shady Nook Resort.
Please state your
It's,
name for the record.
Alex Green. So the one thing that we were concerned about, we didn't want to send an objection letter, but we were concerned about the parking because they have been clogging up the sides of the ditch quite a bit. That would be the one thing I'd like to have clarified.
Yeah, and ultimately, I can speak a little bit on that. Ultimately, that matter should be brought in front of the town. The town most likely would not allow for town road parking, and all parking should be out of the right of way of the town road, which would be 33 feet from center line.
Is that I guess they would have to build for it to be seen, but I just want, I guess, if that's something that they can do, then we don't have any objection.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition to the application? All right, hearing none, discussion by the board. This is a fairly heavily traveled town road.
It is.
It comes right out of the village of New Post and runs directly to two resorts, or at least two resorts with additional campgrounds. Having said that, when you drive by there, it is kind of down low. Did you folks get a chance to get out there and take a look at it?
I did.
It doesn't appear as though there would be any visual impediment driving by, even though it's going to be 2 stories. You drive down into the lot, and then I would assume most of the concentration is on the bridge, not on what's happening off to the sides. I don't have a problem with it. Town board doesn't have a problem with it. So what you folks' comment is.
I'm new, but it seems to me if you'd allow this family to build a home versus hauling trailers up there, they'd be able to manage their property a little bit better and possibly create parking areas rather than bringing in random trailers on the weekend and setting them up different ways. So to me, it sounds like it'd be a visual improvement to the area versus campers.
And JR, would we be allowed, and I did, I tried, backing out and trying to see what would be happening both ways when you're backing out, if it's going to be visual impairment, and it doesn't appear that it will be. And the outlot thing, it doesn't, I don't understand where the gentleman who wrote in saying that he thinks that's going to open it up to all sorts of variances that's not correct. Because if this is an oddity that it was for some reason not annotated on the survey map, it's not going to keep on happening. So, but can we place a condition on? And I understand the concern about Shady Nook, and you'll get it from the other resort out there also, about cars parking along the side of the road and the ditch and.
Yeah, and I think you can. Now, if the variance was approved, obviously there's going to be some element of construction, and that might be a little bit tight during that construction season. And there may be some equipment that's parked out on the road, trailers, excavator trailers and stuff. And I understand that, but I think yes, you can make that condition, but ultimately the enforcement of that is through the town of Ojibwa. And I would imagine that the town of Ojibwa doesn't allow town road parking. I don't know any town that allows town road parking like that.
Well, we don't, and that's
Right.
part of our road also.
Right.
So, it's Hunter and Ojibwa.
Yeah. So as far as the concerns of Shady Nook, and I can certainly reach back out to Mr. Granica, the town chairman of Ojibwa, to let him know that, we're hearing of complaints of parking on the town road, and that, they should have a town road supervisor address those. But if you want to make that a condition that I would hope that applicants could comply with, outside of, deliveries for construction aspects, to limit any type of town road parking, that town road exists as a 4-rod road, which is 66 feet in width, which is 33 feet from center.
Pretty tough to drive around Sawyer County and not find a car parked on the side of the road. trailers and construction equipment and delivery equipment. It's going to happen by whether it's an ordinance is addressing it or not.
And I get
If
that,
it gets
Al.
excessive, I agree with Jay, it's a town road issue and informing them that there's been some concern. I wouldn't call it a complaint at this point, but some concern. Turn the light switch on. All right, any further discussion? Dee, do you have something?
When I was out there today, I just didn't see how it could be big enough to even handle a building there between where it drops off and the road.
Did
And
you,
then with the road, you got the bridge, you got the curve and their driveway. And it didn't look safe.
did you see were the yellow flags there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, did you drive down in there by them?
I
Oh,
walked around there.
oh. Okay. Yeah.
Was the spray paint still evident?
Not a lot.
Okay.
I didn't.
Trying to see.
We actually tried to spray paint the square where the footprint would be. No, that was again in June, so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of area if you were to pull off the road. So this is a shot back at the road. This would be that back corner. This would be the corner closest to the side lot line. There is room between the trees in that corner where they could park. I don't think my photos kind of show that as justice. Yeah, it would be where I'm standing, basically. This would be the corner. And from where I'm standing to where the trees are behind me, there would be room to pull a vehicle along that side.
We're never gonna get a garage, but
No. I guess if I go back to this one. So this is that buffering of trees kind of right along the side here, and there would be room to kind of come in and come down here. And I believe that's probably gravelled off, and that's where one of the campers was being parked in the past.
So where would the holding tank and well be?
Those have different setback requirements. Those can be inside of the 75-foot setback. They can be at 50 feet. I would think you have to have the holding tank within 25 feet of an access point, but with only a 20-foot wide structure, they could still stretch a pump hose around it. So you could put a holding tank up in this corner, you could put a holding tank over here, or vice versa, put the holding tank up in this corner and the well in one of those two. It's tight, but it would fit.
any further discussion?
How do you deal then with the survey map not having any information on it regarding the outlaw?
So ultimately, it's part of the variance request to supersede that portion of the zoning ordinance to allow for creation of a building or a dwelling on an outlot. So it's really a twofold variance, one being building on an outlot and a reduced road setback.
But because it was not annotated on the survey map, that it doesn't mean now that the next person who has something that there is an annotation on the map that says no building can expect it because it says that just to make it clear, I guess, it's not an option for someone that bought that lot knowing full well that they could not build on it because Salters got to get it. And I
Right.
know we look at them all differently, but it was obviously an error. There were other outlots at that time that were created where it was annotated on those maps. So this was an error. that
Correct.
They are
Now,
not
should
responsible
there,
for.
right, should there have been annotation that said that this lot was deemed unbuildable as an outlot? The answer is probably yes. With that being said, someone still could apply for a variance to build on an outlot. I could see that happening again, but again, this board does not set precedent. It's looked at as a case-by-case situation. So even if we were to hear a case in the future where someone wanted to build on an outlot, we would take all the aspects and facts of the case into consideration with making a decision for that individual one. So again, no, and Al's gone on record many times that we don't set precedent with cases here.
Okay.
By either approval or denial.
Correct, correct.
Okay, is this someone, any further discussion? Someone care to make a motion? If not, I can do it. Findings of fact. There's no change in use in the zone district. It's not harmful or damage to the rights of others. It's due to conditions that are unique to the lot, not to the application. My motion would be to approve the application as presented for the granting of variance to be closer to the right of way, the town road right of way, and also override the outlot designation. Any discussion on that motion, or is there
I guess
a second to that?
one more thing that I guess I would, and I don't know how to properly include it, but just so that it is stated that, you know, part of the reason for our approval, if that's what we indeed do, is because there was no annotation and the applicant
Was unaware.
was not aware.
Okay, I don't know how to factor that into the
So,
motion.
yeah.
It's part of the record already.
Mhm. Technically, point of orders, we should have a second, and then if you want to make an amendment to your motion, you certainly can do so, but at this point, we still have a motion on the floor.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Okay, just any further discussion or any amendments to the motion?
It's not really an amendment, I guess, to the motion. It's just making point of the fact that.
Right, and I
it
think
was-
that is the time to do that, is to have that as part of the record, to hold that discussion. Is that one of the reasons why your second an approval is that because annotation was left off of the survey map that didn't specify that this lot was deemed unbuildable. And the record will serve as part of that.
Okay, that's what I just said. yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Got that, Michelle? Okay, thank you. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call for a vote on the motion as presented. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion to approve passes by a vote of 5-0. The zoning office will walk you through the permitting process. Okay. All right, thank you for attending.
Second case, we have public hearing in the town of Radisson, variance number 22-006, owner Thomas and Carolyn Ogle, part of government lot 3, parcel number 022-739095306, 0.21 total acres, zoned residential recreational 1. Application is for the construction of a single-story 28 by 38 primary dwelling with attached 8 by 28 porch. This would be a total of 32 by 50 with eaves, and a 26 by 27, which is 29 by 30 with eaves, detached garage. The proposed primary dwelling is to be located 13 feet at the closest point of the right-of-way to a town road and 40 feet to the center line. The proposed primary dwelling is also to be located 10 feet at the closest point to the rear lot line. The proposed accessory structure, garage, is to be located 55 feet to the closest point to the center line of the town road. The proposed accessory structure, garage, is also to be located 10 feet at the closest point to the rear lot line. Variance is requested as section 4.21, parent 3 of the Story County zoning ordinance. Setback requirements on highways and roads would require the prior granting of a variance for any structure less than 63 feet to the center line of a town road or 30 feet from the right-of-way. The proposed variance of the primary dwelling is requesting a 40-foot setback at the closest point to the center line of Breck Lane and 13 feet to the right-of-way. The proposed variance for the accessory structure is requesting a 55-foot setback to the center line of Breck Lane. Also, per the Sawyer County zoning ordinance, section 18.0, dimensional requirements would require the prior granting of a variance for any structure located closer than 40 feet to the rear lot line. Both the proposed variance for the primary dwelling and accessory structure are requesting a setback distance of 10 feet to the rear property line. As part of the staff report and the on-site inspection conducted by myself, which occurred on July 2nd, 2022, the proposed building location was laid out on the property. The existing structure that currently exists needs major repairs. While there would be allowances to repair the building, it would still require a variance if the cost of the repairs was to exceed 50% of the current estimated fair market value. This amount would be very low, and proposal of full replacement and expansion is now up for the variance discussion. The existing structure is 6.5 feet to the right of way and 31 feet to the center line. So the new building would be moved further back from the road, but would ultimately be moved closer to the rear lot line. The current dwelling is approximately 610 square feet, and the proposed new dwelling without the porch is 1,064 square feet and 1,288 square feet with the porch. There was an existing garage on the property that was removed back in 2019. The new proposed garage is to be slightly larger, but approximately at the same compliant, or at the same road setbacks and rear setback line. So the existing garage wouldn't meet the current requirements. Again, that was removed. And again, they're looking at replacing it with a just slightly larger garage in that same kind of setback area that the existing one was at. By action of the town board, motion was approved. Phil Quad, chairman, Ron Kinsley, supervisor, Robert Villiard, supervisor. No additional comments. Signed Cheryl Gerber, town clerk. There were 20 opinion letters sent out. 3 were returned, 2 with objections, 1 with no objections. Those were submitted to the Board of Appeals members. Would you like me to read those into record?
Yes, please.
Reesburg Land Company received information regarding providing input for the variance application for the above referenced parcel on Breck Road. I don't know if it's Breck or Brecky, Breck Road in the town of Radisson. The proposed setback from the center line of the road and from the road right of way, especially for the primary dwelling, are considerably less than the requirements currently in place. The proposed setback of the primary dwelling at the closest point from the center line of the road is 40 feet, but the current regulations require 63 feet, a difference of 23 feet. Similarly, the setback for the primary dwelling in the town right of way is being requested at 13 feet, while the current regulations call for 30 feet, a difference of 17 feet. These requested setbacks from the town road center line as well as from the town road right of way for the primary dwelling are not minimal amounts. Not only does the proposal request substantial reduced setbacks for the primary dwelling from the center line and the right of way, but it requests a rear lot line setback of only 10 feet as opposed to the required 40 feet. The setback requested from the center line of the road to the garage is 55 feet, is only an 8 foot less than the 63, so that isn't too objectionable. However, both buildings only have a 10-foot rear setback proposed, while the regulations call for 40 foot from the rear lot line. That is a huge difference. The county mapping shows Reesburg Land Company does own land both to the north and south of this parcel for which the variance is being requested, and Reesburg Land Company may consider selling one or both of those parcels to potentially give the people more room for their planned improvements without having to request such a substantial compromise of the setback rules in place. We do not know the owners of the parcel and not been approached by them regarding acquisition of more land, which might be more readily allowed for their plans to continue without asking for such major reductions in setbacks. Reesburg Land Company is not in favor of this application. Signed, Reesburg Land Company, Martha Reesburg, Heisel, President. Now this is a similar one, but this is a different representation. This is for a Martha and John Heisel, trustees of the Heisel Land Trust. So same person, but 2 different entities. Trustees of the Heisel Living Land Trust received information regarding the variance. We are concerned with the greatly reduced setbacks that are being requested on the variance application. Proposed setbacks of the primary dwelling. Again, list the same setbacks as I previously read into record. The proposed setbacks for the closest point of the garage is 55 feet, only an 8-foot reduction. The proposed setback for the primary dwelling is 13 feet, which is a 13 feet from the right of way, which is a 17-foot reduction. Both buildings, however, propose a rear lot line setback of only 10 feet, but the regulation calls for a 40-foot. 10-foot is only 1/4 of the distance that would be set as the required rear lot line setback. And we feel that 10 feet is not sufficient for either building. That said, we are opposed to the variance proposal. This is a response to the letter of September 13, 2022, the Surrey County Zoning Department for the property of 2200, or variance number 22-006, property owned by Tom and Carolyn Ogle. This property is directly across the street from us. We are not opposed to granting the variance as described in the letter. That is all.
All right. Are the Ogles here or someone to speak on their behalf?
My name's Tom Ogle, and we're looking to tear down the existing and put up what Jay just described. We tried to work with the existing in the tune of about $15,000. New metal roof, new windows, new flooring, new pump, plumbing, it's not working out. So we're proposing this.
Do you think you would have exceeded the 50% of the current existing value?
Oh, God, yeah.
So you would have needed a variance anyhow.
It was becoming a money pit. We bought it in 2012 and started working with it and seeing this ain't gonna work. And this is where we want to be. We're starting to get to retirement. I've been coming up there since late 60s, and it's where we want to be. And we're asking for a variance.
Were you aware of this land company that owns property around you
I
and
don't know.
potentially,
We bought up to a back of a woods that's been woods since I was a little kid, and it's still woods, no idea. And there's woods to the one side of us and kind of a easement to the other side because there's power lines that run through.
north of you towards the boat landing, is there a vacant lot? Between
Yeah,
your-
there's a dumpster and a vacant lot, a little corner lot there, yeah. But there's an easement and then there's a vacant lot.
Yep. And that is the one owned by Reesburg Land Company. The one to the north.
And it's,
To the north is Reesburg Land Company.
Towards the boat landing.
oh, okay. It's,
Well, that's all this is an easement, not a ownership.
and,
But it is a lot, you know, where that easement runs, there's a utility easement through
Yeah,
there.
that's, I
Yeah,
believe
that's what-
that's what she said. So the lots to the left, west, I assume, those are Reesburg Land Company also?
No, those are owned by Blueberry Lake Cabin. And they were sent notification of the variance hearing, and we did not receive any responses back.
He's on the other phone. Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
So the Reesburg Land Company with the issue to the rear lot line there is, they don't own the property to the rear?
No, they do not. They would own what would ultimately be classified as the side lot line, which would be the north property line.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right, any additional comments, sir?
no, like you say, we tried to work with the existing, it's not working out, so we're trying to go this route. Like I say, we're getting toward the time where we gotta start planning now, and here we are.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions of the applicant?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have a quick question. Building on the existing footprints, it looked like the cabin you were designing was going to be bigger than what is currently there. Is building the same size cabin and garage an option for you or not?
We don't want it to be because we have family and 600 feet with 2 grandkids.
Can you please step back to the mic?
Yeah, thanks.
We don't want to consider that due to it would just be too small for what we would ultimately, we want to live there too, you know, part of the year anyway, and just with grandkids and family, and it's just, we tried to work with the existing, we're gonna try to make that work, and we don't know,
Thank you.
I guess.
Thanks.
And I should mention and clarify as far as the 50% rule. So there is ordinance language that when you have an existing non-conforming structure based upon a road setback, now this doesn't apply to shoreline zoning, it only would apply to non-shoreline zoning. But when you're doing a structural alteration on an existing non-conforming primary dwelling based upon a road setback, you would not be able to exceed 50% of the current estimated fair market value of that structure. And the intent, I mean, that's still an ordinance, and the intent was to get those off of the town roads. Now, again, even if they were to, rebuild in the same footprint, they still would be required as a variance. Now, again, that 50% would only track structural alterations. It would not track ordinary maintenance or repair. And that's the only kind of time where the 50% rule still holds weight.
Is it safe to assume that this lot was created pre-zoning?
Yeah, this was pre-zoning because this is similar to the last case that you heard. If this lot was to be created today, well, it couldn't. It would be as an outlot because it does not meet the requirements of lot configurations. You're only 75 feet deep on the north side of that lot, which is the deepest width or deepest depth of the lot.
20,000 square foot minimum, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
So 9,100. Okay. All right, anyone else to speak on behalf of the application? You have to identify yourself. For the microphone.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Ogle. And I own this property. I have a problem with the two people who have had concerns about us building. I'm not quite understanding if there is a such easement, why our building would have anything to do with their property, other than they want to sell their property and maybe get rid of some of it and make some money. Because I don't see where, if there's an easement, how that would affect their property whatsoever when they have the same easement through the property. We don't connect. So that's where I have a problem with that.
Okay,
But I just want, if you're making your decisions upon, other requests or denials.
okay, thank you. All right, anyone else to speak on behalf of the application? Anyone to speak in opposition to the application? Hearing none, discussion by the board.
I know there was an individual online that was wanting to speak on this, but now I see that they kind of left. Yeah. Yeah, all right, sorry, moving on. That was that voice we heard before,
Okay,
but they're no longer online.
I'm very familiar with the boat landing at Blueberry Lake. And so I'm very familiar with this cabin because you kind of got to drive down their road to get your boat backed up so you can back into the lake. When they're having a campfire, you know what they're cooking. It's that close to the road. Yeah. Just moving back, the amount that they're proposing is, I think, a positive for that entire neighborhood. If you got a chance to get up there and look at this particular dwelling, I'm not going to call it a shack, but I don't think I could get my wife to sleep there. Hats off to you folks for making it work for as long as you did. I think this is very positive upgrade to not only their situation, but that entire neighborhood and the entire Blueberry community.
I will agree with Al, if you want to write that down right away.
Any further discussion? I would also interject that although this is going to be a substantial increase in the amount of living area that they're taking down and then newly constructing, it isn't oversized for that area. It isn't going to impose on anybody else, anybody's privacy or flow of traffic or create any safety hazards or anything like that. Without going into design issues, just the size that was presented to us seemed very, very reasonable for that neighborhood. Right.
Anything else?
Any further discussion? Does anybody care to make a motion?
I think I do. I would like to make a motion to approve the variance application as presented.
A second.
Who was the second by? Joe? Okay. All right. The motion been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Let the record show that the motion passes by a voice vote of 5-0.
Do need findings of fact.
I didn't bring mine along.
Oh, wait.
Got him. Yeah, there you go.
There is unnecessary hardship, including the 50% rule presents a hardship in this situation. It is not damaging to the rights of others. I did not see, or apparently the others also did not feel that it was the proximity to the road was any particular problem. How many facts do I need, Jay?
Yeah, whatever you think your reasoning for approval is, and there's not a minimum, there's not a maximum.
Okay.
I think you got her covered.
Any of these improvements are going to be nothing but a positive thing for the property.
I would probably maybe add one is that there are unique physical limitations with meeting compliant setbacks on this lot.
Yes.
Like he said.
what he said.
Okay. All right, folks.
All right, moving on. This is variance
Excuse me
application.
one moment,
Yep, go ahead.
Jay. Yeah.
I have a question. Now that you approved it, can we knock it down?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
generally-
you paid a fee for this meeting. You'll have to pay a fee for a construction permit, or what do you call it?
Land use permit.
Land use
Mhm.
permit, and the office will walk you through that. And so swing in there whenever, but is a demolition permit required?
No,
Okay, so
you can knock it down.
can begin that process whenever.
The default in the bylaws would have a 2-year time frame in which to secure land use permits for the variance that was approved. If you can't secure land use permits within that time, you'd have to come back to this board and ask for an extension on the approved variance. 2 years from today to take out a land use permit to build a house. That land use permit still has then a 1-year time frame with a 6-month extension. So if you play the timing right, you have 3.5 years.
Right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. This is a public hearing in the town of Bass Lake, variance number 22-007, owner Frank and Diane Dowell, part of government lot 4, CSM number 1053, lot A, parcel 0029402154007, 1.48 total acres, zone residential recreational 1. Application is for the construction of a single-story 26 by 30 detached garage, 28 by 32 with eaves. The structure is to have a proposed setback distance of 27.5 feet at the closest point to Windigo Lake and a 10-foot setback at the closest point to the center line of a private road easement. Variance is requested as section 6.1 of the Sawyer County zoning shoreline wetland protection ordinance. Shoreline setbacks would require the prior granting of a variance for any structures less than 75 feet to the ordinary high water mark of a navigable water. The proposed variance is requesting a 27.5-foot setback at the closest point to the ordinary high water mark of Windigo Lake. Additionally, section 4.21, parent 6 of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance setback requirements on roads and highways. The setback would require the prior granting of a variance for an accessory structure less than prior granting of a variance for any accessory structure less than the required 30 feet from the center line of a private driveway that is 33 feet of width or less. The proposed variance is requesting a 10-foot setback to the closest point. Closest point to and 16.5 feet on the other corner. As part of the staff report, Pat Brown was out on site as part of his on-site inspection on July 21st, 2022. Helped the applicants stake out and mark a spot for the proposed garage. A portion of the site has been flagged and it was historically been used as an open air boat and trailer parking area. It is approximately 200 feet from the existing cabin. There is an area that would meet setbacks on this property. This area of the property that would meet the setbacks is almost 600 feet away from the cabin and is completely wooded and natural. Additionally, at the highest point on the Dowell's property and would be visually conspicuous, there would be approximately a 17-foot change in elevation over the 55 feet of area from the existing easement road to the building location. That is calculated at a 31% grade. Basically, it would be a 31% grade to get up to that garage area in that compliant location. In conversations, and this is Pat, in conversations with the assistant conservationist, Tim Seidel, there would be challenges and worries about post-construction sites and slope stability. If the variance is approved, the property owner acknowledges that they and future owners would not be able to build on this site location. As per motion of the town board, motion was denied. Justin Hall, chairman, Marshall Savitsky, supervisor, Bob Hammond, supervisor, Jim Evans, supervisor, Dave Albright, supervisor. The variance would be contrary to public interest and would not be in compliance with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance and the town of Bass Lake Comprehensive Plan, section 8.10, because no unique property limitations as there are similar parcels. The garage can be relocated to a compliant location. Number 2, there'd be harm to public interest by building closer than 75 feet to the lake, and the driveway setback request narrows access roads for emergency services and fire services. Number 3, no unnecessary hardship. Garage can be built on the parcel without a variance. Building a non-conforming structure would make the property more non-conforming, as both the cabin and the garage are self-created hardships. The Town of Bass Lake Plan Commission recommended town board denial as well. Signed Erica Washirski, town clerk. I do have correspondence from the Department of Natural Resources, as this is a reduced water setback. Dear board members, the Department of Natural Resources received the materials for the October 18, 2022 Board of Appeals meeting. It was requested by Frank and Diane Dowell to construct a single-story 32 by 28 detached garage that would lie 27.5 feet to ordinary high water mark of Windigo Lake. The variance is requested in section 6.1 of the Sawyer County zoning shoreline wetland protection ordinance. As the board reviews the variance request, please keep in mind that the applicant has the burden of providing their application meets each of the 3 statutory requirements for granting a variance. The Wisconsin Supreme Court has made it clear that proof of unnecessary hardship by itself does not entitle an applicant to a variance. All 3 of the statutory variance criteria must be satisfied in order to grant a variance. They are unique physical limitations. The applicant must demonstrate that unique physical limitations, wetlands, steep slopes, steams, rock outcroppings, or special conditions of the property exist that prevent compliance with ordinance regulations. The physical limitations must be unique to the property in question and not generally shared by other properties in the area. When determining if compliance is prevented, the whole parcel must be considered. No harm to public interest. The applicant must demonstrate that the variance will not result in harm or be contrary to public interest. The board must consider the impacts of the proposed project as well as the cumulative impacts of similar projects on the interests of the neighbors, the community, and the general public. These interests are listed in the purpose statement of the ordinance, and for shoreline zoning include protection of public health, safety, welfare, maintenance of clean water, protection of fish and wildlife, and preservation of natural scenic beauty. Unnecessary hardship. The applicant must demonstrate that the variance is not granted, an unnecessary hardship exists. The applicant may not claim unnecessary hardship because of conditions which are self-imposed or created by prior owners. For example, building a home in compliance and then subsequently constructing a deck without a permit. Courts have determined that economic or financial hardship does not justify a variance. Similarly, the courts have determined the circumstance of the applicant does not justify a variance. When determining whether unnecessary hardship exists, the board must consider the property as a whole rather than a portion of the property. It is the responsibility of the Board of Adjustments or Board of Appeals to ensure that all 3 statutory standards for granting the variance are met. The department understands that there is a compliant location on the property to build the proposed garage. The department also understands, however, that the compliant location is several hundred feet from the proposed location and would require clearing that distance through undeveloped land along an isthmus for both the driveway and the garage. Further, the department understands the compliant location is also on the high point of the property. The department is not sure building in the compliant location is justified in fully, considering the purposes of the Sawyer County zoning shoreline wetland protection ordinance. The board will need to weigh the property as a whole standard against these purposes in making a determination on the request. The applicant wanting a detached garage, while understandable, is a circumstance of the applicant, not an issue with the property. The property maintains reasonable legal use without a garage. Thus, the application does not demonstrate that an unnecessary hardship exists for the request. The department recommends this request be denied. That is signed. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. Mike Wenholt, Shoreline Program Coordinator of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. There were 9 opinion letters sent out, none were returned. That is all.
Okay. Is the applicant here or someone to represent him? Yeah, have to state your name, sir. State your name.
Yes, my name is Frank Dowell. My wife Diane and I own the parcel or the property that we're applying for the variance for. We live down in Illinois, but anyway, I got a little reading here to do about this. The first thing that I need to do is to get the elephant out of the room. Just in case there is someone here that doesn't know it, I am the man that got caught with 107 fish in his freezer. This was published in the Windigo Lake Property Owners Association newsletter. I paid a $1,024 fine and lost my fishing license for 1 year. Not one person on Windigo Lake wants me to receive any special favors. This variance application was denied by the Bass Lake Planning Committee and the Bass Lake Town Board for 3 reasons. The garage can be relocated to be compliant. That's number 1. Number 2, harm to public interest and narrowing access road. Number 3, no unnecessary hardship. Garage can be built on the parcel without a variance. Okay, my wife Diane and I have been here for 15 years now. We discussed building up on that ridge while we still can, but we opted not to. In one of the Windigo Lake Property Owners Association newsletters, there was a survey taken wanting to know how many people wanted to move Windigo Lake into the Wilderness Act. It was nearly unanimous in favor of keeping that small piece of wilderness intact. Diane wanted to build something there before we couldn't anymore, but I just couldn't do it up there on that ridge. Then we decided that we needed a garage and have a legal right to one. Now we are hoping we can put it in the best place. I hope to convince everyone here that I love this lake and all the scenic beauty and the wildlife that surround it. I don't want to see a building up on the hill, and I don't want my grandkids to miss out on that small piece of wilderness. A city set on a mountain cannot be hidden. That's Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. We are very concerned about keeping this small piece of wilderness that God gave us dominion over as unmolested as possible. It is morally wrong to destroy natural beauty rather than enhance it. Okay. When determining whether unnecessary hardship exists, the property as a whole is considered rather than just a portion of the parcel. Let's look at the whole 1.48 acres. There is a ridge on the southern third of my property that is covered with semi-mature oaks and 25-foot white pines. It has some often used game trails. Deer, bear, fox, and grouse love that ridge. God and government gave me dominion over that ridge. No one wants to see a man-made structure built in a wilderness area. Putting up any building is only in the owner's favor, but locating this building on that hill would be an injustice to the land and the lake and the pond and the wildlife and all the people that appreciate the beauty and goodness of nature around Windigo. I could legally build a tree house and garage up on that ridge. It would be a beautiful view for me, but it would be wrong. I've got a park bench up there right now on that ridge. We need a garage, and I feel that no building should be constructed up on that hill. If I can build in the applied for location, I will waive my rights to build anywhere else on my property. Okay, the compliance to the present setback requirements result in the destruction of a great deal of natural beauty and an unreasonable amount of erosion. No matter how many silt fences I use, a building that is 25 feet high that sits on top of that hill will be an eyesore to everyone on the lake. Building up on that steep hill will destroy a heavily used game trail, and that would be an injustice to the wildlife that use it and also to the people that would otherwise see these critters. Building up on the steep hill, then removing all the trees to excavate a driveway would destroy some of the natural scenic beauty. A building up there on that hill would be an insult to the beauty of Windigo Lake. I'm sure that I could ask opinions of everybody that lives on the lake and everybody else that is enjoying that bay. And I believe that they would rather have a building hidden behind white pine trees than seeing a building up there on that ridge. That sounds like a public interest issue to me. If I cannot be allowed this variance and am forced to build in the allowed area, it would obviously be harmful to the public interest. I hope that at least one of you climbed up there and tried to visualize a building in the small triangular shaped area that is presently buildable. There might be an alternative site at the south end of the private road down by the gate. The road would need to be rerouted up the west steep slope of the hill, and then I would have to see where the floodplain is. I doubt if there's enough room. Mr. Neese walked down in this area and perhaps assumed that this was the area that was compliant to build on. Okay, the best spot. This is undoubtedly the best spot for a building. The least amount of wilderness will be destroyed, and the hiding of this building will be possible with the planting of 2 rows of white pine trees. Right now, it is in the best place to store the boats in the winter and the trailers year-round, making the area look like a junkyard, similar to the lakes in northern Illinois. Intentions. I've already taken down 13 trees in this area, mostly oaks. For even if we don't receive this variance, I still need to make the area level. I intend to remove all stumps so as to have a better place to park equipment. The site will be protected from erosion as much as possible during construction by the use of silt fence. Gutters and downspouts will be attached to the building to divert heavy rains into a rain garden. This rain garden will be designed by a professional of 40 years of experience in water detention projects. I've got that on a picture, my brother-in-law is the guy. And I've got it on my phone if anyone cares to see the designing of this water detention. There will be a shoreline buffer zone created by planting 2 rows of white pines that are staggered and planted 6 feet apart. These white pines will also continue the uninterrupted game trail, making it even more comfortable for the deer. In closing, if up on the hill was the best place to put a garage, I would not be here wasting my money and your time. There will be harm to public interest if I am forced to build on that ridge site. It will not affect the water quality or fish habitat. It will enhance wildlife habitat because of the buffer zone of white pines. It will provide more natural scenic beauty from the lakeside. Property damage will be minimal. This is not just what I want. It's what anyone that is around this lake with any sense of justice should want. If this variance is not denied and I erect this garage, I will be waiving my rights to build anywhere else on this property. Making the proposed garage smaller is not acceptable. The building will have 2 overhead doors that are 8 foot high and 10 feet wide, leaving 6 feet total width to maneuver around. That's 3 24-inch aisleways. There was an oversight on my part when this application was written up. I want a 2nd floor in this garage for storage space for all the water toys. This application is for a 1-story building, so I will be reapplying. There is another option that might interest the public. I would be willing to discuss tearing down the existing cabin that sits right on the shoreline if allowed to build a small cabin near this garage. I suppose that's enough to say, isn't it?
Yeah, that's plenty.
It took me a while, but.
Yeah, you got there. Thank you. Thank you. One moment, please, Mr. Dowell. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Dowell? Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else to speak on behalf of the application? Hearing none, anyone to speak in opposition of the application? Also hearing none. Okay, discussion by the board.
Help. If he's going to reapply, I mean, I guess that certainly he can do that if he's going to be changing what his original application is for.
Well,
What are
aren't
we-
we just looking at a footprint right now? The size and height will come into play later.
Yes and no. The publication did go out as a 1-story garage. Now, can this board change that request to 2 stories? I probably should have asked legal counsel that, because again, that's not how it was published. So I don't know if this board has approvals to make it a 2-story. We would probably request probably a subsequent variance. And now you can waive the 1-year refiling rule, but prior to even going into that language, you would want to see if you were going to grant the request you have in front of you anyways, because if you're not going to grant the request in front of you, then it wouldn't really matter whether it was 1-story or 2-story. If you were to grant it as requested, as published, we probably would have to have the applicant come back in and re-request for the 2nd story alteration of that. Because again, that's not how it was published. I can confirm with legal counsel or Board of Appeals representation, TJ Duffy, on that. But I would have some concerns that if this board approves for a 2nd story, then that conflicts with how it was published. How we clean that up, I can figure that one out. But again, let's have the discussion as far as what's being presented, which again is for the 1-story. The one other thing I want to mention then too is the applicant talked about, waiving the rights of building on that other location. I don't think you can condition that. Now, that may be the goodwill intention of the applicant, but I don't think you can preclude someone from building in a compliant location. So if there was to be any type of motion for an approval, you would not be able to make that as a condition. I would have some objections with that. I don't think this board has that power. You could state that there'd be no other variances granted or something like that, but to make a condition that an applicant cannot build in a compliant location goes beyond this power.
Jake, could you remind me how many letters were sent out for reply and were they sent to direct neighbors of?
Yeah, so we send, and we did change our process a little bit. Before we would send out official comment letters that were enticing individuals to write comments. We now send additional notification to those property owners for variances, which would be 500 feet of the subject property request. So this is the map of where the 9 opinion letters were sent out to property owners within 500 feet of the applicant's property. Those 9, again, additional notification letters that go out, specify what the variance request is for, when the hearing is going to be conducted, and if they want to supply additional comments, they can respond letter form, respond email form, or I think there's one other option, but it's not that initial comment letter that we had initially sent out over the years past, but statutes don't really require that. It's been a standing practice and it was becoming too time consuming. So we simplified it and again, send additional notification to those property owners. And if they want to provide comments, this is how they can do so. And again, no comments were submitted back.
Okay. I have a question of the applicant, so you'll need to step to the microphone again if you don't mind, sir. On the map that we were provided with, and the map that's on the television monitor right now, it shows an additional dwelling south of your property.
Yes.
And I looked at an aerial photo today, it appeared as though the only way that party can get to their property is to drive through yours. Is that correct?
They have a driveway going down to Timber Lane.
Oh, really? Okay, that didn't appear on the,
Didn't appear? Because, to my knowledge, I haven't seen the survey of their property, but it looks to me like that private drive ends perpendicular to their driveway and then continues downhill to Timber Lane.
So
Can you see any of that?
these individuals, and I actually had conversations with them. They had called
Westby's?
earlier in the week, Dennis Wesby. They also own this portion, which basically serves that easement of Timber Lane, which actually services multiple other lots. I guess once upon a time, they did come in through the Dowells property, maybe even before the Dowells owned it, as a very kind of beaten down easement road. They then acquired this land to serve as their main access. That easement still exists through Dowell's land to gain access to theirs. But in conversations with the Westbys, they don't travel that anymore.
okay.
It is still a deeded easement, so we have to apply the easement road setbacks to it. But again, in conversations with the Wesby Trust, they don't use it anymore.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So if you didn't have the easement there, citing the garage would be easier, correct?
To an extent, we would get rid of one of the variance requests for reduced easement road setbacks, but we still are, proposing a garage at a reduced water setback on both sides because this would be considered as an isthmus.
Yeah.
And I did kind of zoom in to show the board that other compliant location area. It would be right up on top of this knob, close to the side property line, and would meet 75 from both ordinary highs. So it would be up here and, oops. Oh, I hope I don't lose it here. Okay. And the cabin location is all the way down here. So cabin location on the far north end of the lot, compliant location on the far south end of the lot. Which would be approximately 600 feet.
Would that compliant location also then be large enough for a house? Or is it just large enough for a single structure?
It was never mapped out on site for buildable area to that extent, but let me see if I can do some, we know it's buildable just by looking at the maps.
Couple of years back, I had one of the guys that came out with a big measure, marked off the triangle on top of it. That was close enough. It wasn't real good. You know, right on top of it.
I mean,
I don't know if you ever-
at this kind of angle here, it's approximately 180 feet. Applying 75 and 75 would leave you with 30 feet of depth across that. Now, again, it would be, you know, as a triangle, because you would pull, you know, 75 at this point and a 75 at this point, and then you're going to be left with something up there that would look kind of like that for a build site. Yeah, that would eventually neck down to nothing.
Yeah.
So it'll be, you know, 30 by 30, maybe a little bit more, maybe 30 by 40.
That would be pretty tough for a house and a two-car garage. Wait, in the letter that we got from the DNR, it was pretty plain and simple that a compliant area for the structure was on site, and that the reasoning to not comply was that there was no reason to not comply. I think in our ordinances are say the same thing. If there's a compliant area to build a structure, it's very difficult to get a variance to build that structure in a non-compliant area. Yeah, that's, I think, the crux and the spirit of the law or the ordinance is that those types of variances cannot and should not be granted. We heard testimony that it's going to, building there is going to create something that, particularly if it's 2 stories, going to create a visual eyesore. It's going to disturb more wildlife than it ever protects or enhances, but I guess not all feet fit into the same shoe. But that's the game or the rules that we're given and the ones that we need to live with. I don't know what you folks think, but this is a hard one to approve.
I would agree in that I thought that the DNR letter sounded fairly strong. What I struggle with is the fact that, 9 neighbors were sent out letters and either they didn't understand what the process was, or they just didn't feel like taking the time to apply. So So that's on one side of it, and then the DNR letter is on the other, but I'm in agreement with you. I believe that holds an awful lot of weight, would be the DNR letter.
Well, you'd have to include the township denial as
Yes.
well, so.
Yeah, and that's part of it too, and I think they're probably applying the letter of the law.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for motion. Can the findings of fact just be reference to the town reply and the Department of Natural Resource reply?
So I think you do still want to use, a little bit more than that as far as, looking at the three-step test. Now that the town did reference the three-step test, but, I think this board would also want to reiterate that as any part of findings of facts.
Okay.
And again, whether it is, a unique hardship or whether it's not a unique hardship, whether there is unique physical limitations, whether there's not unique physical limitations. I think, the more that you can speak on the aspects of, again, the three criteria in order to be either granted a variance or reasons for denial of a variance, those are the key points that you want to hit on, especially if it was to go further down the appeals process.
All right. Does anyone care to make a motion?
I will.
Okay,
I'll make a motion, we deny it, because the hardship is unique to the property owner and it's self-imposed. And the proposal appears to be for self-convenience of the owner only, and there are other options available to him.
okay. Is there a second to the motion? I'll make the second. Discussion on the motion?
Do we wish to include that, in addition to what was
Gordon.
was just stated, that we also used for criteria the town's denial and the DNR's recommendation that we deny?
I would add that.
Okay,
Is that an amendment to your motion?
Correct.
So
We
we
gotta
have a
make a-
second to the amendment?
I'll make a second to the amendment.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion and amendment as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Sorry, couldn't help you out. Thank you.
So I did have kind of one little suggestion. If you're looking at tearing down the cabin, you might want to reevaluate with an on-site determination, because you might be able to squeeze in a cabin and a garage up on that knob. Just saying. Yeah. Or a tuck under garage even.
Do they take these notes or do we just destroy them? Or you keep for your files. Just keep them if you want to.
Yep.
Yeah, towards the site visit.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
for attending.
Moving on, no appeals, and under new business, we have approval of the 2023 meeting dates. You have that sheet in front of you. The BoA proposed meeting dates would be in pink. And the only one that Kathy doesn't have marked off, which we need to look at, would be April's, which is during election season, and they kind of move stuff around on us, and November's for gun deer season, which we always have to discuss. So the one in April, which again, if you want to keep it as the 18th, which is the third Tuesday of the month, which it always is, that's fine. But it's also county board night, because county board gets moved around in that month. So I probably will be indisposed at county board. It's probably I mean, how many BOA meetings have we had this year?
Yeah, not many.
3, 4?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a 30% chance
Yeah.
that I'm not available and Pat will have to fill in and you'll be stuck in the assembly room.
And which has worked out fine in the past, and there's no guarantee that we'll even have a meeting scheduled for
Correct.
I don't have a problem with the 18th of April. Does anybody else?
No,
So keep 18th.
Yeah.
And then November's. The 21st is in the heart of the gun deer season and 2 days before Thanksgiving. The 14th, again, we run into the issue with county board being on that same night. So we can either move it to the 7th, keep it on the 14th, move it to a different day altogether. It's up to you guys. We have to at least hold one if needed per month. That's in your bylaws. But you don't need to be the 3rd Tuesday of the month. You could be the 2nd Monday of the month. You could be the 3rd Friday of the month. It doesn't, well, I wouldn't choose the 3rd Friday of the month either, but
No bad idea.
yeah. Or we can roll the dice again on that one and say, yeah, let's keep it on let's go the 14th. And if it's county board and Jay's not available and has to go to county board, so be it.
That's what I would prefer.
I didn't hear anybody ask me about when the shoe sales were or anything.
They aren't having them this year.
Okay, all
No,
right then.
no, there are no.
Thanks for checking on that
Yeah,
for me, Al.
yeah. I have one more thing.
So that was to keep the 14th there?
14th,
Okay.
yeah. So do we need to make a motion?
You
or-
do, yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the schedule for our Board of Appeals meetings be approved as presented, with the April meeting being the 18th of that month, and the November meeting being the 14th of that month. All other meetings as designated on the calendar that was presented to us.
The motion,
Second.
second by Gordy.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion to approve the calendar is approved. Just a quick conversation. Does this 6 o'clock start time work for everybody? Several years ago, we changed it from 6:30 to 6. And I was wondering if 5:30 is even better than 6. I don't know what anybody's work schedule is. I know some of us are retired, so hell, 2:30 in the afternoon works too. That might not work for all. When Mark Olson was on the Board of Appeals, he worked in Spooner, and for him to get here at 5:30 was difficult. I know, Laura, you're still working. I don't know if 5:30 would work for you or not.
Works just fine.
And I don't know how that would play into the zoning off schedule. If a 5:30 start would be better than a 6 o'clock start.
So our normal office hours are 8 AM to 4 PM, and I worked from 8 AM till now, so it doesn't really matter to me. In fact, 4 o'clock would even be great.
And that's doable for me too. I can always.
And I know, I mean, there's rhyme and reasons to all of it. It's the applicants, it's the board, it's committee rooms being available.
How about 5 o'clock? That's halfway in between 4 and.
Yeah, and I mean, most applicants, I mean, if they're coming here to, be granted a variance, they can make concessions to do so.
When the last time we considered going from 6 to 5:30, one of the comments was that it's difficult for attorneys to get here. And not that I'm unsympathetic to attorney travel, but if they're gonna be here anyway, they're gonna be here at
Exactly.
If we're
at
paying them to
5:30
be
instead
here,
of
right.
6.
And if they have other conflicts and have to attend virtually, so be it.
And I don't attend a lot of other county generated board meetings or committee meetings, but hell, some of them are 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning.
Right, they are.
Uh,
8:30.
And citizens are readily available and invited to attend.
Well, and I think in this
participate in
hybrid
those.
world now too of virtual platform, that the timing doesn't matter as much as it used to, where again, applicants were, required or, seriously urged to attend in person, now have the option of attending at their fingertips in their pajamas and their couch.
Yeah.
So I don't think that timing aspect really matters as much as it once did.
I am so guilty of the mute thing. That's just bad news, but so I'm coming to the meeting.
And that could be the same for the board members as well. Now, board members, if you do attend virtually, which you can, you are to have your monitor on, so that we can see that you are the only one in the room and you're not being influenced by outside help and stuff like that. That was part of the bylaws that were passed in the county.
That would happen a lot.
Right. Do you want to make that as part of the motion? We can go back and we can change times.
Well,
It would start January 1.
I know even for the town, we always used to be at 6:30, then we went to 6. And then we said, let's just do it at 5 because people can come straight from work. They can leave work a half hour early. Anybody who wants to come to that meeting and they know that it is always at that time on that Wednesday of the month can figure that out.
For me, I actually prefer 5, just because again, there wouldn't be that large of a gap of time.
I think it's easier on staff.
Okay.
And us, I think we can be flexible. Do we want to chew on this for a month? Can we establish this? Or should we do it at the same time we,
So the reason why we put them on for this month was we're not anticipating another Board of Appeals meeting the rest of the year.
okay,
And we have to have published dates out for the January 2023 meeting, which again, that would be as part of whatever motions we make tonight. Now, I don't know if we have to set all of 2023. That's, I guess, I think the way we've just done it. But we would have to have another meeting in order to change the scheduled times that we've currently been accustomed to, which is 6 p.m.
Okay.
So you're saying we should do it right now?
It'd probably be beneficial.
one other point that I was thinking of when I decided to make this a talking point tonight. The 3 applications that we had tonight, all 3 of those people had to travel.
Mhm.
And so for them to get here, they're gonna be traveling anyway, so to get here an hour early probably wouldn't have been a hardship. I'm just guessing, speculating about that, but okay, well, then I'm gonna, who made the motion to approve it? Approve the calendar.
I think Gordy.
The calendar I did.
Gordon, you did? Would you like to amend your motion to?
I can
select
amend that to 5 o'clock.
The 5 o'clock, at 5 o'clock start time,
Start-
5.
Start at 5
PM.
o'clock, January 23.
That's good.
Yeah. Oh, so we have it as Al motion, Gordy seconded, but
Oh, okay.
is that wrong? Did you motion, Gordy?
I thought you
I
did.
made the motion.
Then Al seconded, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So amend to 5 o'clock start dates,
January 23.
starting January 23 and keeping all other dates as previously
Yep.
determined.
Yeah.
And then you want to second that
I'll
amendment?
second the amendment. Any discussion on amendment? All those approval of the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right,
5 PM.
next thing, motion to adjourn.
Second.
So Gordy amended his original motion. Yep, Al seconded it, so.
Actually, I think Al made that motion, but that's fine.
You made the
I made the
motion
motion
to
before that.
deny
Yeah,
the,
right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I agreed with both.
Would you give
Yeah.
Kathy her candy?
I will, yes. We'll eat it collectively in the office, I'm sure.
Jay? Tell her to
We're
come with
adjourned?
candy bars.
yes.
All right.